lecture series and shared book experience for the greater Bucksport area by inviting local tribal leaders and partnering with the Abbey Museum. I don't know when we will hear whether we got that grant or not, but I'm hopeful that we may see some funding around that. And if not, I may still try and develop that with other grants. Finally, the Buck Memorial Library is rapidly expanding its collections, programs, and use by the citizens of the greater Bucksport area. It is a community space for all. And with free materials to borrow, computers to use, and Wi-Fi as well. It is my hope, our hope, that the town will consider expanding its funding so that we may continue to support our citizens in this community library endeavor. Questions?
Sounds like you're doing a lot of great things, Lisa. There was one question I had. Oh, what was the ARPA funding? What did you end up receiving out of that?
The ARPA funding from from Hancock County Commissioners was $9,400. I have spent well over half of that already replacing collections and or creating collections that weren't there.
Yeah.
And I will have probably spent that by January at the rate I'm going.
Good. Good. Any other questions for Lisa? Rob?
I have a question. Lisa, do you know, in a town the size of Bucksport, where there's a municipal library that's owned by the town, do you know, do they publish sort of an average cost to the town, usually what that library might be?
Well, Ron, I can tell you that the town of Thetford, where I came from before, and the town in the Thetford Library was part of a library federation, so it was like us. It was a 501c3, but it had town funding, and in fact, it had a fair amount of town funding. Thetford was half the population of Bucksport, Orland, and Verona Island. Thetford donated over $100,000 a year to the library.
Wow.
And that went towards collections, programming, library salary, librarian salary. The other thing is that I don't get medical benefits. The beauty of my being hired was that I retired from Dartmouth and I have my medical benefits. If somebody else had been hired, if eventually when I retire, the board needs to hire somebody, that is going to probably be something that absolutely has to happen. And we all know what medical benefits cost. I don't have any, I'm not trying to turn the Buck Memorial Library into a municipal library. Far from it, because I think, the town of Bucksport's got enough on their hands and with everything else. But I do feel that the funding level is pretty low for the size of the population. And I recognize that a lot of this is due to the fact that the previous employees were not asking for anything more. In fact, I don't think they were spending to the level that I am. But the flip side is that we have far more people coming into the doors now. We have a lot of active programming, and we're now partnering with the schools, etc. So the legacy of the previous library, which I'm still learning, is understandable in terms of the funding level. But if the town is committed to having a public library, which I think you are, then I do think that the funding level has to increase. And it's not only from you, but from the other contributing towns. I would say probably at least a quarter of my patrons are Orland, Verona. So it's not just Bucksport.
But I'm just trying to get a sense for the town of what a bargain they might have in having a library. If you had a similar town in Maine that had a municipal library that was, owned by the town, what it might cost them just to give those three towns a sense of, what
Well,
they've got.
I'm not sure what Ellsworth's population is. I believe they are a municipal library. I'm meeting with the Hancock County librarians meet about every 6 weeks. I'm meeting with them on Wednesday, and I plan to kind of poll them. I mean, this includes, Ellsworth. It includes Blue Hill. It includes all of the libraries on MDI, some of which are privately funded and some which I believe are municipal. But yes, a municipal library average amount for a municipal library, I think anywhere in the country with our population would be a minimum of 60 to 70,000 a year. And that has everything to do with, books are expensive. Technology is expensive. Maintaining buildings is expensive, especially right now. So it's not just one thing.
I think that's helpful.
Any other questions?
Do you accept books, donated books? You do, don't you? Or no?
I do. I will be honest and say that I say it with a caveat because there is a tendency for people, not everyone, but a fair amount of people who just assume that every book that they've ever owned is something that my library is going to want. I'm a small library, and so, I regularly have to weed, and weeding being, remove the older editions to make room for the new things that everybody's been hearing about on the radio and on TV and reading in the newspapers. So, no, I don't have every James Patterson. I don't have, every Danielle Steele or the more prolific authors. What I tell people and what works most of the time is you can bring me your books as long as it isn't 15 boxes, which we've had happen without any notice. And I will take what I can take, and the rest go out on the free bookshelf. We have a very popular free bookshelf. It was very popular this summer with summer people and with tourists, and so we definitely accept donations. And I actually have a few readers, Gary Bagley for one, who provides me with a lot of current nonfiction books, which is a game changer for me because that's one less book that I have to buy that I can then devote to another collection that may need boosting. So yes, I absolutely accept donations.
Thank you, and it's great to hear all the great things you're doing down there. It's really impressive. Thank you.
John Paul?
Yeah, Doug, this is more of a suggestion for you or the board, and that's to piggyback on what Ron was asking. If the board can put together some comparatives of other libraries and what they're getting from town supports and stuff, I think that type of information goes a long ways when you're asking for money from the town.
I certainly think we can work on that. That's not impossible to gather. We can see what we can find with comparable libraries, as you say, John Paul. Perhaps I don't know what Lisa thinks, but things like Searsport, Winterport, those serve similar populations to Bucksport as far as numbers of people, and so maybe we can gather from some of those in this area too, comparing to locals.
I'm
Yep.
happy to work with the board, but I can, as I said, I will reach out to my Hancock County librarians and also get on the state website and come up with some comparables and get those. Would I send those to you, Mark, or to Rich, or?
I mean, I think ultimately what John Paul's talking about is some kind of presentation, Lisa, towards the budget season. Is that
Okay.
what you're talking?
Yep.
You know, then it would be something you could present and say, you know, I think what's going to be most beneficial to you as an organization is going to be sustained money, not just a chunk of money, but, you know, a commitment going forward, you know.
Yes, I agree.
Yep.
It would help a lot, because right now I feel like a lot of my decisions are based more in a reactive sense because I know.
I'm sorry. I'm having problems. Bad night. What should I turn off?
You've either got to hang up your phone or turn off your computer, because it started doing it when your computer came on.
Yeah, I would just hang up your phone, Meg. Better now.
And the
Or
last
she's,
thing
she's on mute.
the
if
last
she
thing
comes
I
off
say,
mute, it's
Lisa,
gonna do it
is
again.
make sure that when that presentation happens, that the town, if it's not already aware of the restoration work that's happened at the library and the cost of that. Because it not only is it a library, but it's a historic building to the town.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's on Main Street. It plays an important part of the town. So.
Yeah, so what'll happen, Lisa, is you'll get an email from Rachel Allen at about February.
Okay.
Because the library doesn't come under economic development. So you'll give whatever supporting documentation, and there should be records from years past of how the library came forward. I'm not sure if that was shared. I'm not sure if Doug has that, because it was the treasurer who did it. So you'll have your list of what's been turned in the past, and you can change the monetary amount and add whatever documents you want. And then typically the library goes somewhere around April or May and makes their presentation.
Okay. Terrific. We'll start preparing now then.
All right. Lots of good stuff, Lisa.
Thank you.
Meg, did you have anything to add, Meg? You're muted, Meg.
You're muted, Meg. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry I was late because of the video, on the video part, but I did hear the presentation on the phone. I thought it was well done, Lisa.
Thank you.
And the reason that I wanted to bring this to before our group at this point in time is I think it's important to make everybody aware of all that the library is doing, all that Lisa's working on, so that we can plan ahead.
Yep.
And is there any chance at all of the library receiving any of the Bucksport ARPA funds?
Nothing's been decided, Meg. You know, it's still in process. It's not.
Right, I realize that. But they could still put in for it, though, right?
Rich, do you want to speak to that?
There was a survey that was completed, and I believe those results are still being tabulated. It's not anything that's going to...
It wasn't one of the 10 listed, though. If I remember correctly, I don't remember that the library was listed as one of the 10 on the survey that came through the mail.
It was not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any other input on Lisa's presentation?
Yeah, I'd like to be uncharacteristically brief, but I would like to thank Lisa for her untold amount of hours that she has put in to make this, what I consider in 5 and 5.5 months, a huge success for our town and our community. That the amount of people that come through that door that are just thrilled to see what we are currently offering is just, it's so encouraging. The enthusiasm, the optimism is something that I've never seen quite like it before. And I think it's really as we go forward, I think it can really play a big part as part of the community, really becoming important where, and a place where people can come to meet. We've been, one thing Lisa didn't mention lately, we've been encouraging groups to come and use our facility in the evenings and so forth for meetings, activities. We draw the line at parties, but beyond that,
Well, at least we don't talk about those.
that's true. But I just would really like to thank Lisa for her hard work and all of you for the support that you've shown, and I hope can continue to show going forward. We're making great strides. In 5.5 months, over 600 new patrons, or new cards. They're not new patrons, but is kind of mind-boggling for me. So thank you all, and thank you, Lisa, so much.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
You too.
Next item on the agenda was, I don't have it in front of me, was request for downtown beautification committee. There's a couple of things there. Rich, do you want to start off?
Yeah, we'll start off. I spoke with Meg. Meg and a few unknown people have started to form a committee, and they wanted to do some downtown work. Typically, those types of committees run through a Main Street group or as a sublet of the town. There's a bunch of ideas that whoever's on this committee came up with. It's not very clear on that. And so when Meg and I talked about bringing it possibly to this committee, met with the folks from Main Street Bucksport, and part of their mission is a Main Street beautification and a Main Street beautification committee. So when they had their meeting, I believe it was last Wednesday, I mentioned the fact of this downtown beautification committee to the group, and they were all on board. So it was on this agenda to see if we wanted it to be a sublet of this committee. But I think in the interest of time and transparency, I think it'd be best served if this came under Main Street Bucksport.
I would agree with you, Rich. Any other? I mean, John Paul and Ron, would you have any input to that?
Well, I would add to this that when that came up, we thought it was a great idea. Meg's been busy and, doing some great things. And I know there were some things in the past with the garden club that Main Street supported. So I guess when you got an opportunity like that, I went to Meg and asked her if she would join the board. She's agreed to do so and head up a subcommittee or a committee, beautification committee. So I think we're on the path to figure out where to go. They got a good jump start. So we'll be back with more, I guess is what I would say. And it looks like there's plenty of people committed, and it'll go along with some of the challenges that Main Street has had. They're no different than anybody else during the pandemic. It kind of decimated our volunteer corps because there wasn't much to volunteer for as things shut down. So it looks like it's a good fit.
Yeah,
Do those banners have to be voted on by this group and then by council before we can order banners to put up?
So there's a Candy Cane Festival, which, from the best of my knowledge, is going to be inside local businesses. And there were some banners that the group wanted to hang up on the poles. And I suggested to Meg, since other groups have come forward wanting to, we've had groups that wanted to put American flags on poles. The council rejected that idea. There was another group, I think, that came forward and wanted to put flags up as well. It may have been the Pride group or some other group came forward and wanted to do something, and that was also not allowed or was discussed or do you remember, Mark? I'm trying to remember. I know
Yeah,
at least one group for American flags.
Yeah, I do remember the Pride one, and there was concern as a council or representing a town taking a position. And I don't know that the holidays are any different. I don't, I mean, I can't speak for the rest of the council. Kathy, do you have any input?
I'm talking about street banners, Christmas street banners. You know, people, different towns have them for summer, fall, Christmas, and winter, whatever. Is this a possibility or no?
I I don't have an answer for you, Meg. I mean, I don't. I mean, I think
I don't understand this. Okay, bear with me for a minute. I've seen them in towns everywhere, all over the United States. They're in towns everywhere. What is the thing here why we cannot have holiday banners that say
it's November 15th, Meg. It's not, you know, this isn't budget season. I mean, an expenditure would have to go through.
I have a financial institution that wants to pay for these to get them up, all of them.
Chris, do you have a suggestion? Do we bring it up as an item not on the agenda Thursday? Because we're running out of time.
I can, yeah, I could forward that to Sue to have that put on the agenda for Thursday night's council
I
meeting.
thought it was already on the agenda for Thursday's meeting.
Meg, we're in quarantine. We haven't been in the office.
No. This was before you went into quarantine, Rich. And you and I were talking. We've spoken a number of times. And we said that it had to go before this group, CEDC, and then before the council, before we could consider ordering them. You went down and looked at the machine to make sure that it would not damage the flags, the banners, when it went up and down the sidewalk. You said it was shorter than you remembered, and it was narrower. It was a different machine. It wasn't going to hurt your walls, and it wouldn't damage our banners if we got banners. I mean, so we went over this. This was like 3 weeks ago. This was before the quarantine started.
Yes, I understand, and I said it had to come here. In government, Meg, we have to go step by step. We can't just go jumping groups because then we're alienating other groups.
I get that.
So with this group says and gives its blessing, yes, then I will give it to Sue. I'm not going to give it to Sue and this committee say no.
I got you. I see. Yeah. I'm with you now. So do you think you can get it in for this Thursday? This Thursday?
Yes. If this committee says yes.
What do you think that the council will say?
Meg, you have two people on the council right here. I don't ever speak for the town council. That's not my job. I just present the information as forwarded.
I mean, so Meg, what you're saying is you've got an institution willing to purchase the banners.
They offered. I was shocked.
Entirely, because this was new to me. I mean, I didn't see that in this handout, but so you've got somebody willing to pay for them. You're looking for permission to hang them.
Exactly.
And I guess what we'd have to do is see what the will of, the 7 people on the council was. I mean, I can't speak for them, but.
Right. Rich said that we would not need the lift to put them up, that the black poles are short enough so that they'd be put up with a ladder.
And
I don't do that.
Are you still talking, who would put them up, Rich? Is that Public Works, or is that something that would have to be worked out?
It would have to be something that's worked out because I no longer have a crew. My crew, as I mentioned to Meg, my crew stops working November 1st.
Where were you planning on putting them? On the poles or?
You know the ones that Paula Key had made that the town council had to approve?
Yeah.
Those.
Put them on those. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We have all the hardware and everything.
I like it. I like the idea. I think it would be nice, but I can't speak for everybody either.
But I guess the only thing I'd add, Meg, where are we at with the trees? Is that something you're looking for the town, or?
Okay, the trees would be a separate thing. Apparently, they had decided to not have the trees this year because there had been a lot of complaints in the past. So someone came to me and asked what about doing trees with root balls, and putting them into barrels, planting trees. So as part of the long-term plan for beautification of Main Street, I'm thinking, evergreen trees in the pots that could be there year-round.
Mm-hmm.
And so that they didn't get too big within the barrels, because I think they'd have to be in barrels. they'd probably have a shelf life of like, I don't know, 5 years, a few years before they'd outgrow the pot and have to be replaced. So they'd have to rotate probably with new ones every few years. Nevertheless, it would be part of the long-term beautification plan for Main Street rather than something that went in just for a few weeks and then they were taken out and ground up, recycled.
So would it suffice for this year to make, if I put a ordered recommendation for the banners alone and we continue to discuss, because the trees would have to come from somewhere, the money would, unless
Right. Right. There are people that are interested in contributing to this new beautification project. I had another inquiry today about where to send money. So there is another check coming, Rich. The profits from the Christmas tea, all the profits are going into the beautification of the downtown. We may not be able to raise money in time for Christmas trees for this year. I realize that. I think if we go one step at a time and we get banners this year, that's a great step. And then we just slowly grow this thing. It's going to take time. I understand that. So if it doesn't happen this year, Mark, it's not the end of my world.
Okay.
But if we could work towards that, that would be great.
Do we need a motion just to move this?
I just want to ask Meg one thing, since we haven't quite run it through the way we're trying to go in the future. I think to make the presentation to the council, you probably ought to illustrate, maybe you already have to Rich, what the banners are, the content, because...
I thought I sent everybody a copy today so that you would have it.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right.
Yeah, you did.
You did. Candy cane with the
All
bow
right,
says season's greetings on the bottom.
Yeah, great.
But I agree with you, Meg. I mean, I think an easier step, especially where you've already got funding for those banners, is to, Rob, do you want to make a recommendation that this committee recommend to the council allowing banners to be hung on Main Street, and then we can debate it there?
Absolutely. So moved.
And I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I don't think there was any dissent. So, Meg, we'll take that Rich, you can get that on the agenda at least as an item not on the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Step one.
Okay. Any other input on that?
I just wanted to thank Meg for taking the initiative on this. I had a short window to look at what you sent out, but you've done a lot of work on it, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
I'm surprised
agree.
at the interest already. There's considerable interest, and most of the restaurants are donating their food. We have a couple that are discounting it, but most of them are donating it for the tea. And then other people are donating money. So I think we'll get off to a good start. And obviously, we're going to just have to keep working on that. It's a long-term project.
Yep, I agree. Well, good.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Mark, we're going to hold off on the trees then and allow that new group to take that and move that forward.
Yep. The trees aren't going to be this year, but for this year, where she's already got funding for the banners, we'll seek town approval.
Thank you.
That works. Thank you.
Rich, I have one question sort of related to this whole Christmas thing. Who's taking the lead on the wreaths that are hung and more importantly, taken down? Who's taking the lead on that?
That's the downtown decorating committee, but I'm not so sure that probably shouldn't be consolidated into this new group that's starting to form, John Paul.
I would agree down the road, but I don't know that.
I think you're saying that, Rich, because you're probably the committee of one on that, right?
No.
Oh.
No.
I was out there a couple of times. I know the coming down was tough.
I did help to get them taken down last year.
Yes.
One quick phone call will get them taken care of. The goal is to try to get them down before March, before Easter each year.
That's a good goal.
A better goal will be to get them down before the Super Bowl.
Right.
All right.
All right.
Next item is an update from Main Street, Bucksport.
Yeah,
Ron,
this sort of came up at the board meeting too. As I said a little bit before, Main Street's, like pretty much all organizations during COVID, we've had our challenges. John Paul's going to talk a little bit financially about how we've been affected. But essentially the way we operated was we had our income streams from events that we did and fundraising that we did. And then we applied for grants, and then we received support from the town. And those streams were all about the same. Well, of course, everybody knows that during the first parts of COVID, really events dried up and went away. They just got canceled and didn't happen. So that income stream kind of stopped. And for parts of COVID, the grants and some of the government funding that came from COVID relief filled in some of the blanks. But because, we are an organization that needed to continue, we came up with some programs, and we still had a pretty successful 18 months or so. We came up with the Bucks program and raised a lot of money locally. I think about $32,000. And then that money was matched on the other side of the buck. Maybe it was a little bit more than that, because I know we were somewhere shy of $70,000 that we were able to inject into the downtown, in particular, the merchants and the restaurants, which obviously, suffered a lot in the beginning. So that was a successful program. We continued on with some of the ongoing things, like we were able during the next year to continue with the public art program that we received a grant for, and we have 2 installations in the town. After a cancellation, working with the Lighthouse, the art festival came back, and while it might have been somewhat smaller, it was successful according to many of the merchants. I know some of the ones, like Andy further down the street, weren't quite as didn't get quite as much business as some of the ones at the other end. But again, it kept going. We had a virtual film festival since we couldn't really have the film festival. So that happened, and we did get a small amount of revenue from that. And we continued with Bucks. I think one of the most important things that happened was there was a continuous communication stream with the merchants and restaurants and businesses like Meg's. I know weekly almost we were able to get out and talk to them and see how things were going, and in some cases help with some of the monies that were available, since we went through the experience ourselves. And then in the midst of it all, we had a change of ED, so we had to go through that process to recruit and hire and then transition in a new executive director. So that caused some things to, and then Brooke went on, and so Mary came in, and she came in from outside the area. She had to establish a place to live, and we lost generous support of a domicile for Main Street. That was an in-kind donation. So we felt it was important, with Mary's housing not permanently fixed when she first came, to find a new home. So we made an arrangement with Reverend York and found a new home at his facility. And it was good synergy because he's working very hard to make that a community center. And he's pulled off a number of, meet your neighbor events and other things. I think there was a voters forum for the recent elections. So that was good for us, but of course it went from something that was donated to something that we paid for. And, at the same time, it was modest, but it still helped support Reverend York in his work and put another burden on us. So we really come around to 21, and some of the support that we received from the PPP loans had disappeared. And then there was, I think, some panic anxiety around for the marketing plan and what it stood for and the merchants. And so Meg got together with a bunch and they got some stuff going, and there was, an effort to the craft weekend that would happen, and brochures, and maybe some miscommunication on that. But in the end, there was Main Street ended up not doing the same model that happened before, which was to seek support from merchants to make it sort of pay for itself. And that became an extra cost. So I think John Paul can fill in the blanks. I think we were able to accomplish a lot over the last, 20 odd months of COVID, but it's placed some extra pressure on the organization. And some of which is that, you have a small organization in a town and you get some support, volunteer support for events. And then when events are canceled, the volunteer support, isn't quite as strong as it was. We also are like many nonprofits, and we have a board that has essentially a term limit on it. And some of those are coming up, so we need to transition to new board members at the same time. So there's a lot of pressure on the organization, and we lost one organization in town, the Chamber, and some of that happened because of financial pressure itself. So I think John Paul can fill you in a little bit on where we stand physically, and really we feel that we'd like to, ask the town if they can help us out. It's not that we aren't doing anything. The state right now has some monies, $5 million, that came out of the money they received from the federal government, and we've applied for a grant there. Certainly, a 20% loss of income, we've had that. So it looks like, we might be successful with that, but it's hard to say. And we continue getting Mary up to speed to write, grants again for more outside support and to bring events, back into line. I mean, right now, a good example of this maybe would be the film festival. We pretty much had plans to run it the way we had for a number of years, and the Alamo reopened. It looked good. We were having the film festival in September. We had some submissions of film, but then the Alamo closed. And it was really unknown when it might open back up, so it got pushed off. And at this latest meeting, we're trying to decide, do we wait it out, have something in the spring because the films have been submitted, or do we go completely virtual? It's things like that that have made it hard for the model we've had. So, John Paul, if you want to maybe go over some of the numbers and.
Yeah, I won't try to dive too deep into it, just kind of in broad terms. The events that we had in 2019, we ended up showing a profit of close to $6,000. In 2020, really the only thing we had was a virtual film festival, and that showed a profit of about $900. So it was $5,100 shortfall. And at this year, maybe we made a little bit on the art festival, but we were sharing that with the lighthouse, and so really it's almost zero on events in this year. Fortunately, we had loans or grants, PPP loans, grants that helped us out in both 2019 and 2020. 2020 and 2021. But even with that, this year we're probably going to end up in the red, roughly $3,000. And then what really matters most, is where are we on a balance sheet? Currently, we have almost $24,000 in the bank, but almost half of that, or even a little bit more than half of that, is committed to the Museum on the Street project that Bill's due on that. So at the end of the year, our bank account will probably be around $9,000. That includes the $20,000 we got for the town's fiscal year. So before we get a charge of anything from the town, assuming that we got another amount from them in July, how are we going to survive those 6 months of 2022? Our payroll is and payroll expenses are about $13,500 for 6 months. The rent at the Brown Hall is $1,800, and we don't know what events we might have in the first 6 months next year. So, right there, we have a shortfall of about $6,000 in this first 6 months. Now, it's our job as a board to try to figure out how we going to fill that, or are we going to have to cut expenses? But if we want to continue making progress, we don't want to cut expenses on the payroll side, and so that's where the bulk of it is. So it means we got to figure out ways of coming up with some revenue. Maybe we'll have something with the film festival, but we're not talking big money on any of those events. That's I took a little deeper dive into that state program, and I'm not sure that we're gonna be a likely candidate for a grant. The requirement is that you lost revenue. We did, but that's not what they awarded the grant on, as lost revenue. That's just what the requirement. And then you have to have expenses that fall into one of three categories, and I don't see where we have the expenses that fall into those categories. So I don't see that as a likely bailout for us. Is there an opportunity that the town can give us some money to some way in the next before the next fiscal year? Is there any way of approaching the town and asking for money? And we right now Mary's working on a grant that would bring a neat program to town, but you never know with these grants whether you're going to get them or not. And it would also bring not only money to cover the program, but you're allowed to bring in money to cover administrative costs. So, that's great. If we get it, but you never know if you're going to get them or not.
John Paul, there's one thing that I failed to mention, and that was a decision that we made around this time last year. In 20, we raised the money for the initial bucks, I think in, I don't remember exactly, but maybe April or May, I think maybe April. We were really successful. People were very generous. And then we came around to the end of the year, we'd done an annual fund, fundraising. And we decided that really Bucks was so successful that we should try to raise the same amount of money that we raised before. I think it was 16 or 18,000. And so we foregone our regular fundraising, which would have been money we would have used for expenses. We do have a appeal letter that's going out for this year, but we gave it up last year instead to do a second round of ask for bucks, which again was very successful. The town contributed to that as well from the Silvernail Fund. But that set us back, and maybe we didn't do it right, but we were, from the beginning we said that we were going to distribute every dollar that we took in, and we did.
The other thing I'd add about that program was that I think everybody agrees that was a great success. It took a lot of our ED's time, took a lot of board members' time, and there was nothing in the program that compensated Main Street for their effort. We were happy to do that, but it took away from maybe other things we could have worked on to bring in revenue. So, that was something we were willing to do because we thought it was vital for the merchants in the town. And I think by all indication it was a huge success. So,
well, I think we thought that we were still in COVID pretty strong. I mean, it was the big surge of the winter, and we probably could have done an appeal based on just the first half and raised, pretty good funds for the organization, but it didn't seem like the right thing to do. So
I have
instead,
a question. If these shortfalls are really because of COVID, is there any chance that as a nonprofit, Main Street could go to Hancock County for ARPA funds the way the library did? Is that an option?
I'm not sure, John Paul. You're way more familiar with.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good point. I don't know what the criteria was there, or if there was no criteria. It was just I don't know. Rich, you have any idea?
I believe you can reach out to the county, John Paul. I believe it was nonprofit is what I saw. 501c3, who had impacted by the pandemic. It was different than what I had sent out about the grant from the state, and I apologize. I thought that was a good one for MSB. I didn't read it all the way through, so I apologize on that one.
It might be worth looking into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every little bit helps.
And if I can interject, Mr. Chair, and on behalf of Main Street Bucks Board, the work that the group has done, especially with Bucks to sacrifice their annual appeal to help our businesses get through during the pandemic, and to not keep an ounce of that money for themselves. For other organizations like Wednesdays on Main, who chose not to receive funding last year, typically 1% of the budget, I believe is how it's worded, can go to community agencies. And I really think that, especially with the fall of the Chamber of Commerce, the work that Mary does, the board does, really takes some stress off of me. And, you know, I'd say out of our economic development money that's set aside, and this is one of the groups, as I mentioned earlier, the library doesn't come out of here, but Main Street Bucksport does. I think that that we should help the group. I mean, we got nothing but compliments from Dean over at the fort in regards to the brochure that Main Street Bucksport provided. Dean's able to walk outside with the brochure and show the people, this is what you're looking at. And he said he's gotten great feedback on that. So that the art festival happened this year. I got an email from Gary that looks like the Bridge of the Gap race is coming back in May. And these guys really put the time and effort in. I think we should help them financially.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I support that totally. The other question I had was, I don't remember the list exactly of the funding we did the survey for. Was Main Street on that?
It wasn't. I think how people got on there, Rob, where they had to. The town council had 2 meetings in a row, I believe, if I'm correct, Mark and Kathy. I think it was 2 consecutive meetings, so 1 month worth of meetings where people could say what they would want, and none. To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe any of the nonprofits came forward. So they weren't on the list.
Is it limited to just the people on that list, the decisions?
That part I don't know, because I didn't have a hand in making the list. I know that I presented on behalf of the marina and the waterfront, the seniors for lunches, for helping out programs. I think Jim Morrison and some of the counselors stood up for things that that they had in mind. But for some reason, I don't recall anybody standing up for any of the nonprofits, none of the groups themselves or anyone else.
Well, I'm not. Are you talking about the economic recovery money?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, from the way I read it, it sounded like you couldn't have listed us. That it wasn't specific enough to where that money was supposed to go.
I mean, it just seems like you've made a great case. Everybody that's spoken tonight about it is what they did to support the businesses in the community, and sacrificing the stability, or at least some lifeblood moving forward with your the lack of the giving campaign. It seems, I don't know. I don't know what the criteria for that other thing is, but it seems like a very valid opportunity.
John Paul and Ron, do you have a figure as to what you would need to make it through to the fiscal, the next?
Well, I like I said, I think our shortfall is going to be somewhere around 6,000. I feel that it's our responsibility to shorten that somewhere on our own. We shouldn't go to the town and ask for all of that. But,
Yep.
I would think that, if it was 5,000 and what we did was say, well, by the time the next ask comes around, we'll have a better handle on where we're at. And, some may argue or suggest that it ought to be more than 20,000 anyway, but we reflect what our ask is based on how well we've done in raising funds on our own.
Yep. So, Rich, to do that, we just need a motion and a vote. If everybody, it sounds like people are in agreement.
Yeah, and then what will happen is they'll need to go. This will need to go to the council. I've already emailed Sue about the candy cane banners. Once we get approval on that, I can. This is going to be a virtual one, so I'm not sure if Main Street Bucksport wants to do it virtually or if they want to wait for the meeting in December where we might meet in person again. But if it's needed sooner, as in this Thursday, rather than later in the first meeting in December, the only meeting in December, then I can message Sue and see if we can get that one on as well.
I mean, we're not going to be in the red by the end of the year. So,
Yeah, I mean, our appeal, I mean, could pull us out of the wood, but it's hard to say. Our appeals in the past haven't been that much.
I would say December meeting be fine, Rich.
Yeah, I would take a vote then, Mark, tonight, and then I can have that on the council agenda in December.
Okay, I make a motion to recommend to the council that we support Main Street Bucksport to the tune of $5,000.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Are both John Paul and Ron?
Yeah, I would
Abstain.
yes.
Well,
myself.
no, I wasn't voting no.
Yeah, I wasn't voting no either.
They don't benefit financially out of this, either one of those. So do they have to abstain?
I wouldn't think so, but I'm not. Kathy, what do you think? No, I think you guys can vote if you want. I mean, vote your conscience.
All right.
Well, I'd certainly vote for it.
I vote yes.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next item, I think, was anything not on the agenda. Does anybody have anything not on the agenda?
I just have one follow-up, maybe your opinion on this, Ron, is for Meg's, Meg's presentation and what, if we're really moving forward where Meg's group becomes a committee of Main Street, should the money that you're getting, Meg, flow through Main Street now because we're
Yes,
a
I probably
501,
should. That'd be my guess.
501c3 and
You agree, Rich? Yeah, I think the sooner we start it flowing through Main Street, the better, because after my discussion with Ron the other day, it seemed like that was the way it was going to go. So probably the sooner we start that, the better, John Paul.
I mean, it does make those donations potentially tax deductible depending on how people file their taxes.
Right, because I figured it would either flow through the town or flow through Main Street Bucksport.
Okay. Are we all set on that, John Paul?
You're fine with that, Ron?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Any other business not on the agenda that anybody has?
I'll let the board know that we have met with, so when we did the marketing plan, we included the website. And we only had 2 people bid on marketing. As we know, we need 3 bids. So when it came out to website, met with our IT director, who was shared with RSU 25, Jim Morrill. And we actually have 5 companies for the website. We've met with 3. We're going to meet with 2 more, and we'll bring our findings to the committee in December. We'd like to get on the December 9th council meeting, so because that should be the only meeting in December with the holiday at the end of the month.
Oh, it is the 9th. Okay. Do you want to try to set this meeting for before then? Is that what you're saying, Rich?
I got to figure out how to do that now because I've already we have the Aspire program that's going to present in December, and I told them that we can meet, have them present on the 13th of December. I believe that's that Monday.
I can't be
Trying to
there.
figure out how to. If we have to, we can hold the website. I can get back with Jim Morrill, see if we can get that moved
Okay.
to a January meeting for the website.
Okay. I can't attend the 13th, but that's fine. All right.
I had one question. I'll call it old business. Has the company who had proposed the wind farm come back to the town at all for any alternative to that site?
The solar?
Yeah.
Jump
yeah,
in?
I'm sorry. Yeah, solar.
I think they're approved at the Bark Dump, aren't they, Rich?
They get approved at the Bark Dump, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They own the land. They're not leasing.
And it's an industrial zone, so there's no.
And it's the industrials. Yes.
So they bought the land?
From my understanding, they did.
Oh, good.
Geez, that was my big tip to the former landowner that maybe they ought to reach out to them, and I didn't see any commission on that sale, but
You get an attaboy, John Paul.
All right.
good. That's good.
Anything else?
I just want to mention how great the walls look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really,
Really
what a
good.
difference. So
Yeah.
great job
Right.
with that, Rich, and
Can't
everybody.
wait for Central Street.
Thank you. Well, here's the good news, because after I spoke to the DOT, after they kind of got mad at me about the traffic because of the lane being shut off, I gently explained to them that that was not all the construction's fault. We got a new sensor put on, unbeknownst to anybody. The police were like, "What's going on?" Anyway, we got a new sensor, and they originally told me I couldn't apply for more monies until 2023, and they just called me back and said, "Can you get us some quotes? We'd like to fund you in 2022 as well." The program ran real smooth and everything. So my 10-day quarantine is over at 11:59 tonight. So tomorrow I am going to find anybody to come out and give me quotes on those so that I'll apply for that grant as well. And Central Street and US Route 1 are what's left.
Attaboy.
What about over on where it's Central goes on to Franklin?
I have to work with DOT on that because I'm not quite sure how that works. Franklin's not a DOT road, but Central Street is.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sell it that they did it the first time, just do it again, but nicely. If they're listening
Yeah.
nicely, I'm going to ask nicely.
There you go.
Just move the street sign up the road a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Central Street Extension.
Central Street.
Nice.
Well, the committee's doing great work. A lot of people are doing a lot of great things. The banners, like I said, I forwarded that over to Sue. That should help spruce things up. We'll figure out a way to get them up when they, well, it's going to go to the council first, but if the council approves it, we'll figure out a way. Like I said, Ron, the group's done on the waterfront, so we'll figure out something with the highway crew, myself, to do that, or some of Meg's volunteers. We'll figure a way to get those up. So, but other than that, I appreciate everybody being here tonight. I apologize that this got changed. All meetings this week at the town office are going to be virtual, so it is what it is, I guess.
So the next
Okay.
meeting's the 13th at 6 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Now we need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
All right. Have a good night.
Take
Good night.
care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thank